like Carl Sagan, brought issues and concepts about the cosmos to the Bay Area, to Californians, and also to the nation, but I mean, particularly in California. He's the emeritus chair of the astronomy department, Foothill College, teaching at the University of San Francisco and San Francisco State University. He's the lead author of OpenStax Astronomy Textbook. This, I believe, is the most frequently used introductory astronomy textbook in the United States. And this is the new information, he is co-author of a children's book on eclipses. It's called When the Sun Goes Dark. You can see all of this stuff at fraknoi.com, Fraknoi.com. Tony, you'll put that up there before the end of the conversation, fraknoi.com. And welcome him now, the great Professor Dr. Andrew Fraknoi. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that rousing introduction.
We love you, sir. We love you. I want to ask you about this kid's book. I would, astronomy, I think, comes to all of us as kids a little bit as sci-fi, a little bit as the mystery of the cosmos, all these different fragments of things that create interest. And then, obviously, some of us, yourself among the examples I can think of, run with it for an entire life, So when you come up with this kid's book, I think that's great because it can build the intrigue and the explanation associated with so many natural events. Tell me about the kid's book.
Well, thank you for asking. This is very relevant because there are 2 eclipses of the sun coming up in the next year or so. In October of 2023 and April of 2024, there will be eclipses of the sun visible from the United States. And so my co-author and I thought we should write a book for kids explaining what the heck an eclipse is and why we see them. And turns out the only planet in the entire solar system where you can see a total eclipse of the sun is planet Earth.
Is that right? That's cool. Right. I didn't know that.
Yeah. The book is called When the Sun Goes Dark. It's published by the nonprofit National Science Teaching Association Press, and it's all about eclipses for kids. And we think that this is the kind of slow, fun explanation that kids will need to understand what's happening in the sky.
That's really cool. We're showing the cover art now. So let's talk about the eclipses, because one of the things that you need to do for a total eclipse of the sun generally is because it covers a limited part of the Earth. That is to say, not everybody on Earth is going to see the total eclipse. You kind of have to plan travel, and you have to plan a strategy for making sure you're there at the critical moment. So in a way, I'm loving that we're kind of creating a long runway for people to make a plan and maybe get interested in it. I've done it twice, and it's spectacular.
And you're talking about the total eclipse of the sun.
I am. That's a year away, am I not?
That's right. April, it's going to happen on Monday, April 8th, 2024. Put that date in your calendar. And some kind of eclipse, not the kind you're talking about, but some kind of eclipse will be visible to 500 million people in North America. So every part of the United States, parts of Canada and Mexico will all see a partial eclipse where the moon covers a part of the sun. And then, as you correctly said, in a small path, maybe 100 miles wide, people will be able to see the moon exactly covering the sun. And when that happens, the sun essentially goes out, only its faint atmosphere becomes visible. The day turns into night. It becomes unnaturally still. Animals think it's nighttime and they go back to their habitats. It's really a strange and eerie feeling. And you see the dark sphere of the moon outlined by the hazy glow of the sun's atmosphere behind it in a dark sky. Really a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And so there will be parts of the United States where this total eclipse will be visible, starting in Texas and going northeastward over to New England. You can look this up. There are many places on the web. Just Google Eclipse 2024. There's a great website called greatamericaneclipse.com where you can see all the maps of where it will be best. But as Mark says, it's absolutely now is the best time to prepare for something like this a year away, because only those in the know are planning ahead right now, which you get to be one of them because you're listening to the Mark Thompson show. But only those in the know are making reservations. In a few months, more of the public will become aware of it, and then it'll be hard to make plans.
That's just the greatest point. I mean, that's sort of like news you can use on this. One of the reasons I really wanted to have Andrew Fraknoi with us is that this does seem like it's a year off, but the reality is they're plans you need to make now. Now, I'd heard this. I'd heard that the chances of seeing a total solar eclipse of the sort that you described, the total eclipse, I think they're less than 50% over a lifetime, or maybe it's 50-50. So these are the percentages I heard. You can correct me or tell me if generally this is right. But after you've seen one, the chances of seeing a second one go up to like 78 or 80%. And that means, in other words, people are so struck, amazed by this moment. I mean, it's really transcendent, I would say, almost, that they deliberately seek out the next eclipse. And so that's why the percentages rise that way.
Right. Eclipse fever is something, once you get it, you're hooked. So you're absolutely right. And eclipses are rare in any given part of the world. That is total eclipses, because the path is so narrow. Most often there will not be one right over you. You have to make plans to travel, but we live in a world where people travel all over the world. And so it's a total eclipse happens somewhere in the world just about once a year. It's actually, this eclipse possibility is twice a year, but not all the eclipses become total. And so there are eclipses to be seen, but mostly they're far away from where you live, and you have to plan ahead.
It's interesting. So you can knock around on the web, and you can figure out if there is if there's an eclipse you want to check out somewhere in the world that you may want to go.
Google it.
Yeah, check it out. I want to ask you about, they have this, well, I'm pausing because for a long time, the space shuttle, I was always really swept up in the space exploration thing. That's because a sci-fi really hit me. And so we had those Apollo missions, we had the Gemini missions, all the rest. You the manned missions, and pardon the expression now, in the, evolved culture that we're in. But, with people inside, going to various places, out there in the cosmos. And so the space shuttle kind of bummed me out because it was sort of a more utilitarian view of space. We're going to service the space station, put satellites up there, and the wonderment of space exploration was kind of lost for a second. So here's my, I'm getting around to, they are now talking about, is it the Artemis now, this crew that will be the next group of explorers to kind of get back to what we were doing decades ago, which is space exploration, even if it's near space.
Yep. And as I answer your question, Mark, there are two people fighting inside me. There's the science fiction fan, just like you, who loves this idea that we're, going back into space with people. That's so cool. And then there's the sober scientist inside me who says the money being spent on this crude space program is so large, and all we're doing is repeating something we've done, which is going to the moon. Whereas for that kind of money, we could launch dozens of space telescopes that really reveal what the universe is like the new James Webb Space Telescope is doing right now. So I'm both excited and a little sad that we're going back to the moon. NASA says that they need to go back to the moon before they can think about going to Mars. And it is true that we're going back to the moon in a slightly different way than before. What's interesting about the Artemis program is that they're not going to just go to the moon, bang. They're going to go around the moon next time. This may happen as soon as this fall, although there have been a lot of delays. But they're not going to land on the moon until they put a space station in orbit around the moon. And it's that gateway, that space station around the moon, that's going to be the staging area from which astronauts will then go down to the moon. And that same technique can be used on Mars, where we put a space station in orbit around Mars, and then eventually astronauts could go from that space station down to the surface of Mars. So this is a new approach, and the actual landings on the moon won't happen until the 2030s. So don't hold your breath. But still, it is a resumption and an expansion of the human space program.
I love that you recalibrated me in just 30 seconds, which is an amazing thing when you made the point about the money and sort of the bang for the buck. I literally changed my opinion of this exploratory aspect of government spending. I mean, the space exploration I'm talking about, from what it was. I think I was caught up in the wonderment, and you're right. And here's the context I put it in. Because I'm a tree hugger, I see the devastation that we're doing to this planet, and I see the way in which, in a way, we're ignoring. I mean, as a society and as a society that builds policies for the future, we're ignoring the devastation that we're doing to the planet. We're killing this planet, right? So rather than focusing on the death of this planet and trying to stave that off, we're loading people at great cost into these space capsules and firing them up. And so, Andrew Fraknoi, I think you whipped my head around on this one. So, yeah.
And it is true that we really need to look at the Earth as one planet, just as you're saying, because the planet is in trouble. And while we're so busy fighting each other and dealing with divisions amongst ourselves, one thing astronomy can teach us is that we're a tiny blue planet in the vastness of the universe, and there isn't another place where we could easily live. We've explored now all the planets and moons with which we share the solar system, and there isn't a single other world where humans could just walk without a spacesuit. Not one world is habitable for us. And
When you
that means
say
if we don't
what
take care
when
of
you
the
say
Earth,
yeah,
if
I
we
had a
don't take
follow
care
up.
of the
Go
Earth,
ahead.
we can't then have another place to live. So I'm just seconding what you're saying, that
No,
it's a real responsibility that we take care of this planet.
and I hear you. And the other thing I would suggest is, let's say that there was a habitable planet, and I don't know, where Neptune is or something. I don't know where you find it. This just in, we ain't going there. Okay, I mean, this is where we are. They're not going to fire up the buses for that ride to Neptune, which would take I don't know how many years to get there just to begin with. But they're not firing that up anytime soon. And then I will double back. So we need this place because this is the only place we're going to be. The Mars or even lunar colonization or whatever they're talking about, it's total crap. The Elon Musk thing is total crap. And now I come back to Mars, and I think I've asked you this before, but maybe you can reiterate it for me. Mars exploration, you'd even alluded to the fact that, this might be the strategy that you'd have where you have a space station circling Mars, orbiting, and then setting things up for various probes or for actually some kind of landing on Mars. Getting to Mars, Andrew Fraknoi, that is close to impossible right now with the radioactivity alone, isn't it?
Well, yes and no. I think what you're referring to is that it's a long trip to Mars, and the
Okay.
sun does put out radiation. The charged particles travel at 1,000,000 miles per hour from the sun. We call this the sun's wind, and you get a certain amount of radiation exposure. So astronauts going on a long trip in the solar system will have to wear the same kind of radiation counters that people working in nuclear power plants do and make sure they're not overexposed. We'll have to shield our spacecraft from this exposure. But here's why I think somebody needs to explore Mars, whether it's people or robots. We think early Mars, billions of years ago, was much more like the Earth. Today, Mars is dry as dust. But early Mars probably had lakes and oceans. We've actually landed a robot in one of those lakes right now. So early Mars had lakes and oceans and a thicker atmosphere and the possibility of a second Genesis, of an independent start to life, quite separate from the Earth. And fossils of that early life may still survive in the dried up lake beds on Mars. So that's why we're going to Mars, not to colonize, not to move our culture, but to see if we can find another place where life began.
Oh, that's really fascinating. Thank you. See, I learn with Andrew Fraknoi. I really do. This is great stuff. Uh, well, I'm fascinated by all this stuff, and I love that you bring it to life. You only lecture in the academic environment now, and of course, your book Astronomy, as we said, it's the most frequently used introductory astronomy textbook in the United States, and it's available online. It's part of that Open Stacks program, isn't that right? So where you make this available, it's a way to relieve everybody of the burden of having to pay for textbooks.
Right. OpenStax is a project at Rice University, and their mission is to produce an introductory textbook in every field that students take in college. Because textbooks are so expensive, it's especially hard for students in community colleges to pay hundreds of dollars for textbooks. And these textbooks are all free online. And I think it's a really worthwhile project. And we were very pleased to be asked to be the astronomy team. And we put together this free online textbook that anyone can read and that now some 700,000 students have used around the country.
Are you optimistic about our future?
Well, I have to be because there's no alternative. This is it. We're it. I think I think the amazing thing about the human species is our brains are always figuring out new solutions to problems. So even as the energy crisis is looming over us and we're having a lot of trouble with the carbon-based energy products, we're devising new ways to use solar energy. We're figuring out ways to use the wind and other natural processes and make energy for our planet. So I'm optimistic about the human brain. We can figure out so much when we put our minds to good use rather than to fighting each other.
Hear, hear. Really, really great stuff. Andrew Fraknoi, I'm a huge fan and so excited that you could spare some time with us. And I was trying to figure out if there was a way. Do you give lectures that are open to the public at all? I mean, you do. I mean, you're really an ambassador for science. You must do some of that, right?
Thank you so much. I do. There are a couple of ways that people can hear me. As you kindly said, I do talk in these programs for retired people. Both the University of San Francisco and San Francisco State have programs where retired people can come back and take fun classes without term papers, exams, or grades. It's called the Fromm Institute. It's the University of San Francisco and the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at San Francisco State. And I do give six session short classes there. And actually on May 10th, I'm going to give a public lecture at my old college, Foothill College in Los Altos, all about these two upcoming eclipses. And if people come to that lecture, they can even get a free pair of eclipse glasses to
Oh,
observe the
that's
eclipse
great.
safely. The Moore Foundation has donated glasses to the eclipse outreach. And so May 10th, I'll be talking at Foothill College about the eclipse. So I do give talks from time to time.
That's great. So yeah,
I love
Google.
appearing on programs like yours to help.
We love having you on. We'll have you on again if you have time. And obviously, as these eclipses draw closer, we'll do that as well. And again, the book that we showed is the kids' book. It's When the Sun
Goes Dark.
Goes dark, exactly. When the sun goes dark. And get all of this information at, there it is, we're showing it on screen now, When the Sun Goes Dark. It's a kid's book designed for children about eclipses. So, When the Sun Goes Dark. Good stuff. Andrew Fraknoi, please visit again. Really enjoy you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Andrew Fraknoi, everybody. Yeah. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.